Hello guys, welcome back. As in the previous tutorial we have learnt about Swift optionals part 1. In this tutorial we'll learn about Swift optionals part 2. There are a few more things to learn about optionals. So in the previous tutorial we have created a playground. Swift optionals.playground will work on that particular playground only. So I'll double click that particular playground, and as you can see, all these things we have learned in our previous tutorial we have created for your revision, for your information. I'll go through all these things one more time. We have created an optional, we have understood how the syntax of creation of an optional variable. So what is the syntax? You just need to put an question mark besides the data type, and how to retrieve an optional variable. We have learned how to create an optional variable, and then how to retrieve an optional variable, and then force unwrapping of an optional variable. So now in this tutorial we're going to learn about a new features of optional, which is known as automatic unwrapping. So what is automatic unwrapping? So in the previous tutorial we learned about forced unwrapping, which means while retrieving the value of an optional variable, you have to put an exclamation mark to besides that variable to get the proper value, to get the assigned value in it. Otherwise it will return the value with an optional keyword before that value. As you can see over here, I have printed my string, which is an optional variable, without the exclamation mark. So it printed optional Raji. And if I try to use an exclamation mark besides my variable, it will print proper value which I have put into my variable, which is known as Raji, without that optional keyword. So we want values without the optional keyword. For that we need to put an exclamation mark besides my optional variable, which is known as forced unwrapping. So we'll learn about automatic unwrapping. So what is automatic unwrapping? You can declare an optional variables using exclamation mark instead of a question mark. Such optional variables will unwrap automatically, and you do not need to use any further exclamation mark at the end of the variable to get the assigned value. So what is meant by this particular definition or statement? I'll explain you practically. So let's start creating a new variable. Variable auto optional str, which is of type string, and instead of a question mark, which is the basic syntax of creation of an optional variable, I'll use an exclamation mark. This is the basic syntax of automatic unwrapping, creating an optional variable with an exclamation mark, which means while retrieving the value from the optional variable, we don't need to put an exclamation mark one more time so that the optional keyword is avoided. We just need to put the optional variable name and we'll get the proper assigned value. So let's take an example. I've created an optional variable, auto optional variable. I'll assign some value in it. Hello Swift optionals. And we'll check whether this particular optional variable is nil or not using an if else statement. If my optional variable is not equal to nil, then print the value in it. Else print my optional, my auto optional variable has a nil value in it. So as you guys know, which statement will get executed? Obviously the if statement will get executed because we have put some value in it, hello Swift optionals, and we are checking if auto optional str is not equal to nil, then print it. And as you guys can see the difference over here, I haven't put any exclamation mark besides this variable name because we have created our optional variable using the exclamation mark instead of a question mark, which means we are automatic unwrapping it. So while unwrapping, we don't need to put an exclamation mark one more time. As you can see, it is not printing along with the optional keyword. So in the previous case where I have created optional variable using question mark, while unwrapping we need to put exclamation mark in it so that optional keyword gets avoided. If we don't put an exclamation mark while unwrapping an optional variable, it will show, it will print the value in it properly but with the optional keyword. We want to avoid the optional keyword, so we have to put an exclamation mark. So while the use of automatic unwrapping, you just declare the variable using exclamation mark and no need of using the exclamation mark while unwrapping it. This is the major difference between an automatic unwrapping and a normal forced unwrapping. So this was the feature of automatic unwrapping. Now we'll go to the next feature, which is known as optional binding. So what is optional binding? Let me first explain you guys what is an optional binding. So we can use optional binding. Why optional binding is used basically? We need to use optional binding to find out whether an optional contains a value, and if so, to make the value available as a temporary constant or variable, which means if we need to check whether the optional variable contains a value, and if it contains a value, how to make that value available as a temporary constant or a variable. So let's take an example. I'll use a simple if else statement one more time. First, we'll get to know the syntax of an optional binding. If let constants, let constant. So as you guys are aware that let, declaring a variable with let keyword means we are creating a constant, not a variable. We are creating a constant whose value can't be changed. So I have created a let constant. If let constant equal to some optional value. This is syntax which I am explaining you guys, and here will be the statements. So what is the syntax of optional binding is if let constant equal to some optional, that's it, and then put your condition over here. So this is the basic syntax of optional binding. We'll take an example. So as I have already created my optional string, I'll convert it to an optional forced normal optional string. So yeah, we'll use the same string. So I'll check if let constant string equals to auto optional string. So what are we doing in this particular statement is, if we are checking if this particular optional has some value in it. If it has some value in it, I'm trying to save the value of this particular optional variable into a constant whose name is constant string. So in this single line of statement, we are doing two things. We are checking the value of an optional variable, whether it contains a value in it or not, and if it contains a value in it, then we are assigning the value of the optional variable to a constant, let constant string, to a constant named constant string. So yeah, if there is a value in the variable and assigning it, and then I'm checking some condition over here. Print statement, I'll print and I will not print now the optional variable. Instead, I'll print my constant, which contains the value of an optional variable. And if this is not the case, then it will go to else case and print my string does not have any value. So as you guys know, it will get into, obviously it will get into the if condition, because I have created an optional variable and I have assigned a value of hello swift optionals to it. So basically, one more time, what is known as optional binding? Optional binding is, we'll check first, we'll use an if else statement, we'll check whether our auto optional string has some value in it or not. If it has value, then assign the value of the auto optional string to a constant string which we have created in the if statement only. We have created using the let keyword constant string, and if it contains a value in it, I'm printing my constant string, and else I'm saying that my string does not have any value. So my auto optional string has some value in it, hello swift optional, so I'm checking whether it has value. It will, the value will get assigned to my constant and I'm printing it. So in this particular case, it will go into the if statement and it will print my Swift has hello Swift optionals. So it is working properly. So in this tutorial, you guys have learned about automatic unwrapping and optional binding, and optional tutorial has been completed now. I mean, the entire basics of optionals have been completed now. So in my next tutorial, I'll explain you guys constants, the use of constants in Swift. We have understood the use of constant, basic use of constant, but in my next tutorial I'll explain thoroughly in detail how to use constants in Swift. Thank you guys for watching this tutorial. If you like this tutorial, just click on like and subscribe to my channel.